So it's like, all right, yep, I'm open to doing something. So tell me, what is owner financing? Well, you as the investor just say something simple like, well, Mr. Seller, owner financing just simply means that we're going to go ahead and we're going to close on the property and you're going to hold a mortgage against the property, which means that you're in a very strong protective position on the property. And I'm just simply going to make monthly payments to you until I cash out. Does that sound like something you're open to? Just keep it that simple. Because then once we get into the paperwork later on, then you're going to have to overcome probably some additional challenges if the attorneys get together. But when you're on the phone and you're just handling basic scripts like that, just keep it as simple as possible and as direct as possible.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Elevate Through Real Estate channel. So we've gone through what is creative finance, the techniques, how it can be incorporated in different businesses. Now, the question is, when you actually go out there and start doing deals and start making these offers, because it's not a common thing, landlords and sellers are going to have some questions for you. So what are some of the commonly asked questions, Zach, that you get? I mean, I know you have a whole list that you've compiled over the decades, which we'll drop in the description for you guys, so that way you can download and take a look at those. But kind of focusing on the top three. What are some of the top three commonly asked questions that real estate investors specifically get once they start to actually try to do these deals with sellers?
Well, we described what each one of these options were when it comes to you as the real estate investor or the realtor utilizing them. But I want to go over exactly like if a seller asked you, like how to be able to describe them to the seller, which I think is really important because really at the end of the day, it's the simplification of these types of terms that get you the deals, right? If a seller says no, which is very likely going to happen, and the reason why I say this is because I'm a firm believer that the seller, as soon as the seller says no, that's when the conversation starts. They're able to kind of put up their wall, and then you say, okay, well, totally get it, and then you ask them more questions. So a simple one would be like, so if you're asking the seller, hey, if I could agree upon the price, or if I could help you relocate, or if I could take over these payments, would you be open to a lease purchase? And the seller would say, well, what's a lease purchase? And the simple answer is, this is a great question. The way this works is a lease purchase is very simple. It just means that you and I agree upon a price. It just means that I take over any and all responsibilities of the property. And then at some point in the future, you get cashed out. Does that sound like something you're interested in? So it's just the simple version of it. Now, they don't have to know the ins and outs of the deal. You do. But the seller just needs to have enough information where they're educated enough to then say, okay, well, yeah, I think I'd be open to that. Now, if that's the case and they say they're open to it, well, then I start going through a line of questioning to start determine what to really just make sure the motivation is nailed down, but also what's the finances on the property. So I'll just start working through, like, can I assume you have a mortgage? Can I assume you have a monthly payment? How much is that? If we were able to structure a deal, how long of a time frame do you think you'd be willing to wait? Which leads me to a next question, which would be a commonly asked question, which is like, okay, yeah, I'm open to this, but like, how long of a time frame do I need to wait in order to get my money? We have this thing called term anchoring. Like people call it price anchoring, where it's like they'll drop a price even though they're willing to go much higher.
Yeah.
So with term anchoring, we'll drop a term, meaning like the end date that the seller has to wait for, like really far out there, because we know if we drop it really far out there and we get something higher than we were originally that we cared to get. So we'll say something along the lines of, yeah, Mr. Seller, people in your position and that we end up structuring something with, they're willing to go 30 years. And then you just stop. And then the seller will usually say, what do you mean 30 years? I can't go 30 years. Okay, so what's the longest time frame you're willing to go? Now you throw it back to them. So I know it's about a little bit of script work too, but that's where the commonly asked questions come into play. Is how to be able to handle the consistent questions that you get on a day-to-day basis and then be able to structure these deals. So now I'm asking the seller, which the commonly asked question was like, how long of a time frame? I'm putting it back on the seller. And then once they tell me a time frame, like they say, oh, well, I'd be willing to go 5 years. Then now like any good salesperson would do, you would hem and haw a bit.
Yeah.
That might be really short. Would you be willing to go 7? Okay, yes, I'd be considered 7. All right, well, in that circumstance, although, I would have taken, say a 60-month deal, now I've got an additional 2 years out of that deal. And that's just a simple, commonly asked question that we get. Now, let me give you one more just because a lot of sellers that you're approaching are homeowners, right? And a lot of them, they care the most about is that they don't want their house to be ruined, right? Because as soon as I say lease purchase in that circumstance, they automatically think rent. Like, well, I don't want to rent the property. Or I don't want, what if somebody trashes my house?
Right.
Well, now this is where we educate them a bit and say, I'm glad that you brought that up because we actually don't deal with renters. We deal strictly with buyers. And also, I've been doing this for a while now. And at the end of the day, the buyers that I work with don't trash houses. And guess what? Your deal is strictly with me anyway, so I would be the one that'd be fully responsible for it anyway. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I hope that makes things a little bit easier for you.
Totally. Because there's a lot of, I think language is a very important element to this because it's the way that they perceive what you're saying in order for them to be receptive and open to doing a deal, right? So that first conversation with the seller where you're introducing this creative finance, I think is going to be the most pivotal and most important thing you could ever lay down, that this is a solid way to close a deal. And then 100%. We'll get into the scripts in the next video, you guys, because let's give them 2 more because I don't want them to. Yeah.
We talked about lease purchase, so let's give them how to explain owner financing and a subject to.
Yeah.
So
totally.
So it's like, all right, I'm open to doing something. So tell me what is owner financing? Well, you as the investor just say something simple like, well, Mr. Seller, owner financing just simply means that we're going to go ahead and we're going to close on the property and you're going to hold a mortgage against the property, which means that you're in a very strong protective position on the property. And I'm just simply going to make monthly payments to you until I cash out. Does that sound like something you're open to? Just keep it that simple. Because then once we get into the paperwork later on, then you're going to have to overcome probably some additional challenges if the attorneys get together. But when you're on the phone and you're just handling basic scripts like that, just keep it as simple as possible and as direct as possible. Now the last would be, all right, so what's a subject to deal, right? A seller tends to not ask that directly, but it's when I'm telling a seller, hey, I have some options. And one of the options is that because let's assume they have no equity in their house or assume they're behind on payments, I would say something along the lines of, all right, Mr. Seller, well, based upon the current circumstances on the property, what needs to happen is I'm going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and catch you up or I'll close on the property. But what I'm going to really need is time. So when I go ahead and close on this property, we're going to need to leave that loan in place and we'll make the payments for you until we go ahead and cash it out. Does that sound like something you're open to? Just keep it that simple and then you get the deal. Let's hope.
Hey, well, yeah, because it's a lot of that, right? So I've studied this in neurolinguistics programming. It's like, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But for me to articulate and communicate something clearly to you, you've got to have a very, very good understanding of what the hell you're talking about. So
I have no idea what he was talking about.
Like that. So you guys got to catch the previous videos and look at all the techniques and understand the structure really, really well. Because when they ask you about it, if you're like, oh yeah, hold on, let me check. That's not gonna fly with the seller, right?
That's when you call your coach. 1-800. True. At the end of the day, this is an education process for both sellers and if you sell and rent own to your buyers. Because this isn't mainstream, right? We have never been taught to do this growing up, right? There's one particular way that we were taught in order to buy real estate and know that every seller has been taught the exact same way. So you are presenting a new option that they didn't have. So patience and clarity and simplification and then working them through a process to educate them is going to be the way you're going to structure deals here.
1,000%, 1,000%. And just making sure that you've got really all the details and things down if this is something that's new to you. So go back on the other technique videos if you need a refresher.
You're gonna need many refreshers, and we got a couple more videos coming up, so stay tuned with us.
Yes, and the next one being the script. So this is actually like writing it out, like how Zach would approach a seller with a deal.
Yeah.
That's what you guys are gonna learn in the next video. So stay tuned. We're dropping that one soon.